So let's get back to the file. We learned about bringing the avatar in, how to use the modular library, and we also mentioned that you could download garments and accessories from CLO. In this case, we are gonna go to the MIUAS file, and then we go to number 2, garments. And here you see that we have prepared some files. Some of them are if you would like to further explore the modular library after the session, we put them there for you as well. But we are going to choose now either, I'm going to choose, for example, moon, but you can also choose sun, whichever one you prefer. And in this case, I have already between brackets slightly styled it with the hair style that I wanted and the shoes that I wanted. And now I would like to add it to the screen. I will do right click, add to workspace. An important mention that we would like to make is that it is possible to bring in multiple avatars within the screen. But I would recommend to first edit them and style them separately. And then if, let's say, you want to make a final edit that you have multiple in one screen, then you bring them when they're ready. This is also because we talked about the modular library. At the moment, it can only identify in one avatar at a time to apply the modular library to. Okay, so if we all have this file open, I have under here, or wait, I will do it differently. I have this file open. I would like you to select the top. So I would left press, keep it pressed, and hover until I can select all of this. And I would just do backspace or right click delete. Now my avatar doesn't have a shirt, and I did this with a purpose because I want to show you how to add the garments to the avatar. In this case, if I would double click, you see this is the slippery slope that I want to prevent you to fall in. If I would double click and open, it will overwrite this file. So I would suggest either drag and drop it within the file, and then it will ask you, do you want to open or add? And then I would select add. I select OK. Yes, OK. And now you see that my avatar is wearing the top that I wanted to add. In this case, you see that, for example, it's clipping a bit, and that is because physics, the CLO wants to know which layer is going first. So the first thing that you could choose to do is to either select up here, which turns on the simulation, or you can click space on your keyboard, and then it starts to simulate. And then I will stop it. And you see, I happen to know that these trousers are a little difficult with the draping. So I am going to select them. I can hold Shift and click on the different pattern pieces, as well as the waistband. I'm gonna move it down. I really recommend to try to keep your patterns organized because it can get a bit confusing also when you're assigning materials. Okay, in this case, this is the waistband, this orange flap, and then I have the patterns. We will select from left to right, and then go to the 3D window, right click, and I will freeze them. And you see now it's turned blue. I will right click in the 3D window itself, so not on the garment, not on the avatar, but where you see gray. And then I could, sorry, and I'll hold Shift, and then I could scroll down and it says hide color. Let me see. Where is it? Oh, sorry. Just right click, scroll down, and then I can select if I only want to hide a freeze or if I want to, you saw first it was strengthened with orange. I can select which one I want to hide. Why do we do this? Is because earlier I mentioned that maybe you want to make your final export from the 3D window, and then of course you don't want these colors to be in the way. So then I could say hide all, And now you see that you will see the material only, even though it's applying the physical property of freezing it or strengthening it or solidifying it. Okay, so that was the first step. The second step would be I want to divide it into layers. So I would select, maybe if I want my top to be inside, then I would go select the patterns by left click, keeping pressed, hovering over all the patterns that I would like to select and letting go. And then you see in the left side, it's all been selected with yellow. And I want to change something about the garment. So that means I want to change a property. The property editor is on the right side of the screen. So here, I could scroll down now. And you see that we come onto the simulation properties. For this, I want to make sure that my shirt, in my case, I'm gonna choose to put my shirt on the inside. So I'm gonna make sure my skirt is on layer 0. I also want to make sure that I am adding some, let me see, sorry, the screen is in front of each other. Yeah, so I will start by making it to layer 0, and then that is ready. And then I want the pants to be on the outside, so I do the same, hover and select. And then I have it on layer 2. I can also put it on layer 1 and click OK. Now, if I simulate, what is going to happen is then that my pants are gonna be on the outside and the shirt is gonna be on the inside, and it's not gonna clip anymore. You see how it's going inside now? And sometimes you need to help it a little bit. In this case, you are getting all these extra folds and stuff because my particle distance is very small. And also because I chose not to simulate the blue one. So it's trying to find a bit of space. I will click Tab to stop simulating. I will increase the particle distance a little bit and then simulate again. Okay, this is falling a bit better. And then what I think I would like to do is to do the opposite. I will right click, excuse me, I will select the bottom, right click, and then I will unfreeze it. And I will try to simulate it gently by clicking on the space bar. Okay, now I have my garment ready to start adding the prints. I see a question. Somebody is a little behind. What part are you missing? Would you like me to show how to change the top again?
Maybe a short recap could be good.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna, yes, of course. We also remember it's not about the speed, but about what you can gain through the process. Okay, so for example, I go to the MIUAS folder and then the folder number 2 with garments. And then it's possible to do two things. Maybe you already have your customized avatar that you prepared during the break and you would like to continue working on that avatar. If that is the case, we gave the possibility to import garments. So you could click, for example, here on the bustier, if you have moon. But if you have sun, you can also click on the jumper. And then you right click, add to workspace, and then you select add. And you click OK again, and now it's been added to the workspace. Has it worked so far? Super. Okay. Sometimes it depends on the garment as well. And this is when I deleted the first shirt, she has a bustier underneath. Yes, that was a little cheat that we had playing with the time. So it can be either. Um, for the next part of the day, it's really about adding the print. So if the bustier is in there, that's also fine. Yeah.
As long as there's a garment on.
As long as there's a garment in there and we want to prevent it from clipping. Yeah. And
But
clipping
of
is
course,
not,
knowing how to put it in is
yeah.
important. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So we want to show you indeed how to bring it in, how to remove one. So that is very great. We did that at first, and also how to layer them, because that's also sometimes what students are learning. And mentioning that, for example, here there are many fabrics on the right side. This can be very overwhelming. There's like so many fabrics in there, and that might not be so useful. The good thing is you see here, these fabrics, it has a little delete icon. Everything that has a delete icon, logically speaking, I can delete. But let's say there's a material in there that you want to delete and you don't see the delete icon. That is because it's still assigned to a pattern. So if I want to clean all of this, for example, I can delete all of them, but here you see fabric 1, I cannot delete it. And that is because here, if I click on it, you see on the right side in the pattern box, it shows me that it's been assigned. If I really want to delete it because it's ugly, I don't want it anymore, what I could do is two things. I can reassign an existing fabric that might be fulfilling my needs. So I click and drop it. And now, well, I will select all the patterns. Don't worry, because I will go through this step more in detail, but it's just to show you how to delete it. So now this fabric should not be assigned to anything yet. So let me see here. Okay, now I replace fabric 1 with default for simulation. So what that means that now I can delete the fabric. Okay, but let's start at the beginning because as we said, we don't want to skip steps. If we start from left to right, we could go here in the left side, and we mentioned the CLO has already some libraries to get you started and get used to the tools that they have. And here you see that there's the option for fabric. When you double click on it, it will drop a list. And here you will be able to go to different material types, fabric types. And the interesting part for this is that these fabrics that have been added by CLO also have taken into consideration the physical properties. So if you want something like a leather, or if you want something that is knitted, it also takes the physical properties into consideration. And what does that mean? It means like if you have a fabric that should be very light, very fluid in its movement, it's been considered. And here you see, if I hover over a fabric, it says what construction it has, the materials, the weight, and maybe at the beginning it might be something that you are not so familiar with, but since you are making garments, it does make an impact. And then, okay, so let's say I want to select my first material. You can scroll down. In my experience, you see the version 2s are more avant-garde materials, more current. So those can also be interesting to work with. And how do you add a material to your design? Well, what you would do is the following, is that you can click and keep it pressed, bring it to the object browser and let it go. And then it's been added to your object browser. But you can also have it clicked. And let's say I have a material like default for simulation, which has nothing assigned to it. I could click and drop it on the material, and then it becomes that material. And lastly, I could also first, actually not even lastly, there's two other ways. I could bring a material into my browser and then drop it on the patterns that I want. Or I could drop it on the patterns that I want within the 3D window. So I will repeat. You can have from the fabric library already existing in CLO, you can bring a material that you desire onto your garment directly in the 3D window. you can also choose to do it directly in the 2D window, or what might help to keep a bit more track and better overview is that you could first make a material in the object browser, assign it this fabric, because that makes it possible for me to say, okay, this will be corset center. And now I know that it's assigned to that piece of the fabric, and then I bring it either directly in the 3D window or the 2D window to my avatar. So I would like to invite you to play for a minute, try to test the different methods I just shared, and then we move on to the next step. And of course, if there are questions in the meantime, I cannot change the material. The garment still looks orange and strengthened. Yes, okay. So you are changing the material, but it's not showing it because it's showing it strengthened. So what happens is the following. If I click here, I right click and I strengthen mine, so it will look like yours. You think like it doesn't show. That's correct. If I right click, not on the avatar, not on the garment, but just in the 3D window, I will say show all. Now you see that it shows these features that I've added to my garment. Okay, so in your case, you would like to hide the orange. So you click on the 3D window and it says show or hide color. And maybe you only want to hide, for example, the strengthening. And then you say hide strengthen mesh. Let's see why it's taking a moment. Oh, sorry, hide strengthen. And then you see it's hidden. But let's say if I, for example, have this one is frozen, this one is strengthened, which I just hid. This is solidify. Okay. And I go to show hide. I can say show all. Then you see all the different things that I added to it are being shown. And then I can select, do I want to hide, for example, show hide only freeze? Or do I want to, let me go one step back, that this one is frozen. Yeah, so I hit the the freeze here now, but I can also say that I want to, sorry guys, I just cannot see the screen for a moment. I can also say that I only want to hide one of them. So to recap, because I got a little mushed up in my sentence there, you have different properties that you can add, such as freeze, strengthen, solidify, and layer. And layer is always green. So if you have different layers, it starts showing it in green, which can be very frustrating because then you don't know what you're working with. And because of this, Claude thought of a solution that you could hide the color of what is making it hard to work with. So maybe I don't want to see the layers, but I do want to see that, for example, some parts are strengthened, some parts are solidified, and these all have their own colors. And then I can choose, I can hide all the colors. I can choose, I want to see some of the colors. And even better, it is even possible to add your own colors. So that is why this show or hide tool is very handy. And then if I want to make my final export through the left side, I would want to see the beautiful textures I've added and the materials, and I don't want this to be in my way. So then I do show hide all. I do show all first because even I lost track now, so I do hide all. And now we're back on track. Yeah? Okay, so I'm gonna select this one and I'm gonna bring everything to the same color for my sake. And then I am going to, so I said that I had corset center, so I would like to keep that. Okay, I will simulate. So it will come to the, yes, okay. So this is the first step in getting to move around the materials and such. Are there any questions so far? No? Okay. Great. So what I did now is that I selected a material from the library and I added it to my collection. Anything I don't need, I always recommend to delete. And I always remember that if you have maybe, if I have this corset material and maybe in a moment I will change some settings to it, you can do two things. First thing is to rename it by double clicking and give it the appropriate name so you can identify it. But you can also, for example, say copy and then rename this one and say, for example, corset sides. And the reason we would make a copy is, for example, maybe I want to change the physical properties, or maybe I want to change the print of the material, and I don't want it to be affecting the material from the other parts. So, okay, so the first thing is if everybody has applied at least one fabric to their garment, I would like to ask you to make a copy of the material here by selecting it, making a copy. And then here we can test what we learned earlier about the changing the colors of the material. Okay, so if I would select corset sides, I'm gonna bring it to the sides. For example. And now I did it one by one, but remember that you can select multiple patterns at once. And then you can use the download button, which is this little arrow going down. And now it applied it to all my materials. But I still want this one to be different, so corset center. Okay, so now if I select corset sides and I scroll down in the property editor, we have the base color map. The base color map is where you see this graphic of the print that you have on your fabric. It used to be called a texture map. In case you're going to do the tutorials and you don't recognize the naming, it has been recently changed to the base color map. And what it does is that here you can go to your library, whichever you're saving your materials. And here I have the visual and I open it. But we already have one, so I'm not going to change it. I will go then to desaturate. And then you see two things that happened. It made it one color, which is like a grayscale, what I mentioned earlier. But also I was thinking I was working from the center. So always keep in mind that here in the object browser, it will show you which material you're working on with this blue icon. So only if you are here and it shows it blue, that's not sufficient. It has to be that it's highlighted and with a blue icon. So then you know which material you're working from. Okay, so I repeat, I select the material, I scroll down, I select desaturate, and I am going to go on this little white box, and this makes it possible for me to go through the color scheme, and I can click within it and see if I find it fitting or not. And then I select the color, you see it here on the left, and you could also do the eyedropper. And if you want to bring it maybe the same hue to another place, you can also select the code, the hex code. Okay, but for now, I will, for example, bring it here. And it says, sometimes you get lost. It's often gives you hints. I click ask, so I can leave that part because that's not the color that I wanted. I can hover. Okay, this looks kind of nice. Then I click apply and close. And then deny. Okay, so here you see that even though the material initially was the same, now it has a different color. If I would, for example, turn off the desaturation, you see that it's still a different color, but what is different now is that it had this pinkish color, and I removed the pink so it became gray, and then added pink so it was like a net, like neutral place to start from. But if I just add color on top of it, it is literally that. You see that the tone will be different because it already was one shade of pink and I made more pink on top of it. And that's why you see, even though my material is the same here in the color map, it is different than for the rest of it. So has everybody been able to follow this far? Yeah?
From comment section part at least seems
Okay.
all good. It's also, yeah, clear steps.
Okay, super. Okay, so that was the first part, using the materials from CLO, but maybe you want to, of course, customize it because that's the fun part of using the tool. Then it is also possible to bring in your own materials or to work with graphics. In the materials from today, if you go to Me, Us, we also have here fabrics. If you double click, I brought in some. The only thing, my top has been orange since the start, even after hiding strengthening. It's not the strengthening. I think what happens with your top is that it's showing, if you go here, it's showing the Banten skive. So if you go in the second floating box, yeah? Okay, super. So for the ones who might not know what I'm referring to, sometimes you have like this other, when we have bodices and corsets and stuff like that, you have the Banten skive, which strengthens certain parts of the structure. And then if you don't want to see it anymore, you can go to the trim display and hide the Banten skive. Okay, so we are gonna start bringing our own materials because we want to see what it is all about. Let's say you imported a swatch. You can do that directly from Photoshop or Illustrator. What is important is that you are either working with a JPEG or a PNG. And then here I prepare some materials. So you can feel free to choose the material that you would like to work with. But the first thing I would do is to show how to make a new material. So I can do add. And now I here have a fabric. And in my case, maybe I say I want to call it lace. Okay. And then I could do the following. I could bring the lace and drop it. And then voila, I have a new material. But I could also have lace and say, but I want to add some sort of print to the lace. And then I go to the folder that we have, I select the flower, I click open, and now it has this print. So in theory, the lace becomes the base of the fabric, and this will become the visual. So let's see what we can do. And I bring this, and I click on my download button. And this is what I'm referring to. If you click on a pattern piece and F for focus, it will bring you closer. And you see my base is a lace, but my graphic is those little flowers that I wanted. But let's remove this for a moment. And here you see that I've added a lace, but you see that it's kind of oddly tiled. So let's fix that first. And it doesn't matter if it's a lace or something else. You can double click on the material, and let me, here you see in the texture mapping right in the object browser, you could select to make unified. And there you see, if I zoom in, that then it's applied the material how I wanted it to be. So I'll zoom out again. And so I will repeat, you can select a material. And if you want it to go all over the pattern, then you can select that it's in the texture mapping button down, unified. If you want it to be some sort of repeat, you can also do that. So I can select unified, and then I could make it again desaturate and go and select the color that I want, applying close, and now I have this pink lace brought into my scene. But maybe that's not what I want at all. So I will say, okay, I will add this one here for a moment. I'm deleting this. Okay, we start over. I'm going to bring in, for example, this swatch. I can scroll and drop. Let me see. Yes. When it comes to swatches, there are some tools that you can find online where they already have these materials. And what is handy with these materials for the fabrics is that they will have the maps. And earlier in the presentation, Fernanda showed like one fabric, and you saw these different squares that were purple, gray, white. And these are what we are calling the maps, which give the properties to your fabric and your texture. So this one is from an online library called VMod, VMOD, which makes it possible to also download sometimes free textures, or sometimes you can also pay for them. But what you see here, I added my swatch, and if I scroll down, there's different maps. And the most important maps to know at the beginning of your journey are the normal map and the displacement map. The normal map makes it possible to give this feeling of shadows through grayscaling, and you always identify the normal map through purple. And this gives the first impression of depth within your materials. This displacement map gives it more this feeling of 3D. And then the opacity map, if I am working, for example, for a lace, makes sure that certain parts of the material are not visible. Sometimes if you start from an existing material, you will see that all these maps are already filled in for you. But in my case, you see that it's not filled in yet. So if you move around, let me see if I can do it a little different. If let's say I don't have a normal map, and if I move around the intensity, CLO will create it for me. So that is also a good tip to know, that then it helps you if you click on this little box, this little three weird shapes there, then it will make one for you. So that is also so nice that even more things are being incorporated instead of having to make it separately. Okay, so how is everybody doing so far? As a reminder to everyone, okay, that's from Tia. Okay. Yeah, so I've added my fabrics. I will drag and drop this one on the top. And I invite you to just drag and drop some of the materials where you might like them. And then we will show you how to work with the prints and the repeats. Okay, so the next step would be I want to maybe bring a graphic or a print. And we learned that you can add a new fabric, name it, I don't know, I will call it sun. And then I double click on it, and you see that this fabric doesn't have anything in there yet. So I could start by bringing in the image that I want to use for the fabric. So you select the material, the textile that you want to use. Then you can choose the base map, and you click on those 4 squares. And in my case, I have, for example, this fabric, and I open it. I can desaturate. I can change the color, apply and close. Wait, I didn't grab it. Now I have this purple. And then I can go a step further, is that I can say, okay, I want it to be a velvet, for example, or I want it to be a leather. Okay, now it will have leather properties but I don't have the maps yet, because so that means it's not going to show me like how the material would drape that well. So I can use this little generator to help me to do that. What is very important to remember is to make these maps before you change anything in the fabric. Because let's say I have a lace and I have the holes in the lace. If I make the lace bigger before I have the other maps, it's gonna mismatch. Okay, so now that I have this, I think I would like to add it to my pants. I select the garment and then I can drag and drop. And now my garment has this one, and you see the transparency is because I did this opacity map, but I actually do not want my pants to be transparent, so I can delete the opacity map, and now it has a better fit. I can now select a bit to have the simulation fit a bit better. Okay, so these are the first steps to getting the material onto your garment. No, because the more you add to the file, the heavier it is. It's always recommended for sure to have a normal map and to have the displacement map. But for example, if you don't have something like a lace, sometimes it's not necessary to have an opacity map, so it doesn't have to exclude anything from the file. And then also, if you have something that is not shiny, you can also choose to remove the metallics. So it depends on what your goal is. Okay, so yes, this is how you start to add the materials. Let me see which step we're gonna do next. Is that you can also go through here. You see here the fabric, and then there's like a little checkered flag. And there it makes it possible to add graphics. So if I would click on the plus sign, I can go to the folder of today, and I can say, okay, I want to add a graphic. In this case, I went outside of CLO, but remember at the beginning of the session, we also brought in the files. So I actually, if I go to the MIUAS folders and I go to folder for graphics, I double click, I already have some graphics in there. So what I could choose to do, for example, is let's say I want to bring this flower in. I could drag and drop it. And now it has been added in the object browser as a graphic. What does that mean, you might ask? That means that I can add it as a graphic to my garment. So for example, if I want the flower to be here, I can drag it and then it's placed on the garment. But I can also choose, for example, to bring it, I'm gonna move my avatar to the side and I will bring it here. And please be aware that you can do this either in the 2D window or the 3D window. But what is bothersome to me now is that my flower is being cut by the pattern. If you see here in the object browser, you could scroll down and it says over seam line. So if I click the off, it will turn to on. And you see now my pattern is going over the seam line. My graphic, sorry. Yeah, so that is the way that you can do that first step. But I could, would some of you like to try that and see how it goes?
Maybe you can at the same time, when people try now, to go through the step of adding it and also scaling it.
Yes, that is the next step.
Yeah.
So you mean to repeat how to add it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, editing. Okay. Yes. So that was indeed the first step, but you can also choose that maybe you want it to um, be repeated, which is what I did here with this flower in the left. You see, I started with this flower initially, and then I made a repetition. I did the desaturation and changed the color, make a repeat, and then you can also choose how to scale this repetition. But it depends because you can do that either through the fabric or through the graphic. For the graphic, I would like you to show you that you can bring the graphic directly to the pattern. So I could also try it with this one, for example, and bring it in here. And then we try to put it here. And then you see again, that is on the garment. And then I can do over seam line. And you see that it's there. And then if I can choose if I want it to be on the front of the pattern. So let's say if you have a jacket, you can have it only on the front of the material or both. And then you can play with how far over the seam line it should go or not. And then you can link it to other measurements. Okay, but I will reset this one. So reset. Because I wanted to show you something else. So I will undo for a moment if Chloe will collaborate. Is that, yes, as Tia was mentioning, when it comes to the graphics, you have the graphic edit tool. And if I have, for example, this flower, you see here's where I import it. And you see 3 dots on the right. If you would click on these 3 dots, it says Open Texture Editor. If you click on that, you see now I have my beautiful flower. And then you can choose, for example, if I want to scale it. But to do that, I need to select it here in the left where you see this little eye. And then you can choose to scale it down, for example. You can choose to turn the color off and to desaturate it. But also, I'm so sorry because the screen is in my way a little bit. I could make a copy of it. And then this copy I can select and desaturate and change the color. And let me see if it's showing it here. Here. Opening the window a little bit. Sorry, here. I can go here, change the color, applying close. And then in a moment, it should change this one as my desaturation is off. And my color switch is off. No, it's not applying it. That's a bit. Because the idea with, oh, you see here, and it's showing it here in the top. It's become red. So the idea with this is that I would be able to apply and close. I could save the image. So what we did here is that I selected the original file. I clicked to copy or to add, depending what you want. In this case, I did copy, and then I desaturated the material so that I could change the color. And then I click here on the bottom left to save. And then you see it has added this one to my library. And when you do that, it's also possible to play with the repetitions if you want it to be repeated. Because if you're scaling it, then you, for example, here, you didn't see it because they were on top of each other. So I could select to scale this one down. I could go to the previous layer, scale it down as well. And then I could select to make, for example, more copies. The bottom one, I know it's red. So I can make a few copies. And then it gives the possibility to make like a freer option of my print. And then I would be able to save it as a print. So I could click here and then save. And if I would go, it comes back again for me to my other window. So I
But
click.
basically you can see that if you click from there, it's going to be saved and you can import it then to
Yeah.
Chloe
And
as a
it
graphic.
automatically does it. See, now I have all these different flowers that I can bring to it. Okay, so then there was one more thing that I wanted to show with this is that if I bring a graphic into Chloe, let me just exit this because okay, exit it. Yes. What I wanted to show is that you can do more with the graphics these days. You can bring in a PNG, and sometimes your PNG has a white border. The good thing is that you can bring in a PNG with a white border, and what CLO would do, if I say, for example, let's try with this one. Oh yeah, I have to apply it to a pattern because it's a graphic. So let me wait, no, let me not do it with that example. The idea is that you can bring in a PNG and it can use it to trace it as a pattern. And if you want to do that, either it has to have a transparent background or a white background. So if I would have this flower, this red flower, and it has a white background behind it, CLO can still recognize it that that white shouldn't be there. But if I have it like with a, I don't know, a pink background, then it cannot differentiate that that shouldn't be there. But the last thing that I wanted to show about this is that, for example, I could, if I go into the 2D window, and I will try to come to a specific pattern piece, for example, here in the front, and I F for focus, and I would like to bring in this graphic that I made from the flower. I could select, for example, the flower and drop it. And then, but I don't want to have the flower there just yet. I would like to make a pattern of this piece. What I do is then drag and drop it on the pattern, and then I can right click, and you can say with the editing tool, why was not taking it? Right click, trace as internal shape.
So you
So
needed to be in the graphic section to use the tool to
yeah,
select. Yeah.
because you're editing the graphic.
Mm-hmm.
So now it has traced the graphic, and then you can right click, and something is not grabbing because you say traces internal shape, and then you have this internal shape. You see here, you can barely see it, but it has this really thin line, right?
Mm-hmm.
This line, you go to the Edit Pattern tool, and you see that I can right click, and I could say to, wait, it because it did it twice. So let me just do it again. So that's why it looks a bit weird. I go to the edit here. You do trace as internal pattern shape, okay? Then you can right click and clone as, you can clone it as a pattern or you can clone it as an internal line. So if you clone as offset as internal, it's a little far from you guys, sorry. The screen is a bit, I cannot see. Okay, so
And now it has created a new pattern piece
yes, it
based on the
has
graphic.
exactly. But that makes it possible to uh, clone as an internal shape, which I use to bring here to the garment. Because then you can right click, cut and sew, and then you will have the hole into the garment. Or you have it here that I have it cloned. So that means that I could actually go back to my graphic and match this graphic to, oh, yeah, so I can match this graphic to the CLO pattern so that it will show that if I want to add thickness to the material, that the pattern also becomes thicker. But I just need to, if you guys don't mind, let me see one more time why it's glitching.
But we have one question if you,
Yeah, of
before
course,
we
you
go
can ask
to
anytime.
our next presentator also.
Yeah.
How do you delete a graphic from a specific garment?
Yeah, so this is the graphic editing tool. You see a shirt with an arrow. Then you can select the graphic, right click and delete.
Mm-hmm.
And then the same as was actually with the tool is that you can also here you see you can bring it in to have a repetition, or you can bring it drop, right click, and then you can trace this internal shape. And this internal shape you can then, with the editing tool, duplicate as a pattern, so that you can also use that shape within the pattern and give it another material and other physical properties. We're looking forward to see your experiments. So maybe just before we move forward, maybe in the meantime, everybody would like to save their files.
Yeah, remember, save.
So you could select your file, save as, and then you can choose if you want to save the project, which will save everything within the file. And then it does a zip project, or you can choose to save different parts of the project separately. I always recommend to do both, because then you can build up your library, but you can also, yeah, have your file.